to the World War II newspaper channel where we read the Chicago Tribune one day at a time, going through World War II as it happened through the eyes of those who lived it. If you enjoy content like this, please subscribe to this channel and click on the bell icon to get notifications when a new upload is going to premiere. And also, if you want to hear the actual newsmakers, go check out my other channel, the companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. There we have vintage broadcasts, including newscasts, speeches, old movies, and music. And subscribe to that channel and click on the bell icon. Now for the newspaper. News as read from the Chicago Tribune for January 8th, 1941. Henry Chopp reporting. The weather today. The sun rose at 7:18 a.m. It set at 4:36 p.m. For Chicago and vicinity, partly cloudy to cloudy on Wednesday and Thursday. Warmer Wednesday, gentle to moderate southerly winds. The low temperature 24 degrees. The high temperature 30. Today's headline tells Navy plane shortage. Washington, D.C., January 7th. Congress today was given the first official picture of the sagging Defense Production Program so far as naval aircraft is concerned when Rear Admiral John H. Towers, Chief of the Navy's Bureau of Aeronautics, testified before the House Committee on Naval Affairs. The Admiral's statement was like ice water thrown upon the administration's fiery ambitions to police the world as outlined yesterday in President Roosevelt's opening message to the 77th Congress. Salient features of his testimony. There is a serious shortage in airplane engines which cannot be remedied for at least 18 months, probably longer. As of January 1st, 1941, there were 2,590 naval planes of all categories on hand, an increase of only 445 over the 2,145 planes on hand January 1st, 1940. The Navy's goal is 16,000 fighting planes. Of the 2,590 planes on hand, very few are modern fighting craft with adequate firepower and armored protection for pilots and gasoline tanks. 660 are training planes. Armor plate production is also bottled up. Early estimates of airplane costs have been found optimistic. There is a shortage in flight instructors to train new pilots. The 3,059 pilots on active duty have largely been required to maintain all fleet squadrons in an operating status. About 2,100 instructors will be required when all flight training facilities are operating at full capacity. Admitting the difficulties encountered thus far in the aircraft expansion program, Admiral Towers said he entertained high hopes for the future. Delays in deliveries, he told the committee, have been caused by a combination of factors which he listed as follows. Number 1, delays in expansions of plants. Number 2, shortage of tools and of tool-making personnel. Tool makers blame New Deal indecision for chaos in the program. Number 3, increased engineering time on all modern aircraft development. Number 4, delays in furnishing basic materials. Number 5, failure of subcontractors to meet obligations to prime contractors. And finally, number 6, legal hindrances such as the Walsh-Healy Act, which regulates labor standards on government contracts. And now for world news. Athens, Greece, January 7th. A squadron of Greek destroyers entered the Adriatic, penetrated by night into the Albanian Gulf of Valona, and shelled the Italian-held port with 60 rounds without sighting Italian warcraft, the Greek Marine Ministry announced tonight. Then, said the communique, the destroyers, built both in Italy and Britain, returned to their bases at reduced speed. The action was reported to have taken place on Sunday night and coincided with another British aerial bombardment of Valona, in which fires were declared left burning in warehouses and elsewhere on the waterfront. In Belgrade, it was reported that the wreckage from the Italian steamer Geneva, including 500 barrels of naphtha had been found on the Yugoslav coast near Bar. This presumably is one of the two Italian supply ships sunk off Bar January 3rd by British or Greek warships. Greek military reports said the Greek forces are menacing Italian land communications between Tepelini and Valona. The Greek military spokesman said the Italians have evacuated 35,000 sick and wounded from Valona alone, and that since the outbreak of hostilities October 28th, the Italian losses could be counted in the tens of thousands. Dispatches from the Central Albanian Front claimed Italian defenders of Klissura, east of Tepelini, had been endangered by Greek capture of a 5,500-foot peak north of the town and to the rear of the fascist positions. The Greek Ministry of Home Security declared that more than 100 civilian casualties were caused in Korica, Albania, by an Italian air raid. Cairo, Egypt, January 7th. Advanced forces of the British Army today were declared officially to have thrust almost 70 miles west of fallen Bardia to occupy the military airport serving Tobruk, the main Italian base in Libya. They seized 40 fascist planes grounded there by British aerial action. Some of the fast motorized units used thus far so successfully in this desert offensive were reported almost at Tobruk's gates, darting in here and there to test the port's outer defenses. The British command itself put the situations in a sentence. Operations toward Tobruk are proceeding satisfactorily. Later, another communique said British bombers again raided Tripoli, 700 miles west of Tobruk, causing widespread damage to wharves and shipping. Tripoli was again raided heavily by bomber aircraft of the Royal Air Force on the night of January 6th and 7th, the communique said. Several tons of bombs were dropped among motor vessels in the center of the harbor, causing a series of explosions and clouds of smoke. One direct hit was registered amidships on a large motor vessel and was followed by explosions. Several cargo ships were probably hit. Fires were caused amongst the customs building and wharves. The power station was bombarded and much damage caused. All our aircraft returned safely. A further raid was carried out on Tobruk by our heavy bombers. Widespread fires were caused, which were visible from 30 miles away among barracks, stores, sheds, and motor transport concentrations. Our aircraft returned without loss to their bases. The communique said that planes also raided Derna still farther to the west. 3 Italian black shirt commanders deserted their troops during operations at Bardia, a special British communique said. This action, said the announcement, left the regular commanders to fight on. The regular commanders are Army career men, as distinguished from the political black shirts. Nothing was said officially here about the total number of Italian troops now put out of action, but official quarters in London estimated that 94,000 had been rendered ineffective, 70,000 prisoners plus the dead, wounded, and missing. In announcing that the Tobruk airport at El Adem, some 15 miles to the south of Tobruk itself, had been abandoned without a struggle, the British thus indirectly laid claim to an effective command of the air at least along the entire 70 miles of coastal area from Bardia. The approaches to Tobruk Harbor were declared cut off by British warships. The coastal road in both directions toward Bardia and westward toward Tripoli lay under the shadow of British fleet guns. Thus, while the main forces of the British Army were gathered for a grand assault, British informants suggested that the estimated 50,000 Italians defending Tobruk must elect to stand or give in without effective reinforcements. Rome, January 7th. Renewed air activity along the Albanian front and capture of an important position from Greek troops were reported today by the Italian High Command. A successful raid was said to have driven the Greeks from the position where the Italians said quantities of automatic weapons and munitions were abandoned. The Italian War Bulletin said several prisoners were taken in patrol clashes. 4 enemy planes were reported shot down, one by Italian anti-aircraft guns in a raid on an Italian base in Albania, and 3 in a clash of fighter plane squadrons cruising over the battlefront. None of the Italian planes was reported missing. Rome, January 7th. The Italian High Command today gave the Italian people the news of the British capture Sunday of Bardia, strong Italian base in eastern Libya. A communique stressed the courage of the defending forces and omitted any mention of British claims that their advanced mechanized units had penetrated Libya to a point south of Tobruk. A semi-official statement citing Bardia's defense as a glorious page in Italian arms said the Italians were opposed by 250,000 troops supported by great armored units, not less than 1,000 planes, and the entire Alexandria fleet. During the 3-week siege, the statement said the Italians shot down 53 British planes, sank 2 warships and a steamer, and damaged a destroyer, torpedo boat, gunboat, and monitor. Cairo, Egypt, January 7th. Headquarters of General Sir Archibald P. Wavell tonight grappled with the problem of accommodating upwards of 70,000 prisoners taken by the British thus far in their lightning campaign against Italian North Africa. By sea and by rail, those captured in the victory at Bardia are pouring into the Nile Valley from the desert at the rate of 2,000 to 3,000 daily. These defeated soldiers will have to be fed, clothed, housed until the war ends. The British say they never expected to capture so many. They wired off large enclosures in the desert for captives. But it was impossible to prepare huge stores of food and water for them, and the first job was to get them out of the desert. Wounded Italians are sent to British hospitals and Libyans to Egyptian hospitals. The Egyptians pity the Libyans. Woe our fellow, the word was misspelled here. The Egyptians pity the Libyans who are fellow Muslims. Women of the Red Crescent, Muslim version of the Red Cross, distribute candies and cigarettes among them. Large prison camps in the Nile Delta are composed of rows of tents and a few scattered wooden structures. The prisoners have no clothes save in which they stand, and often these are rags. The British have placed large orders for uniforms, blankets, towels, toothbrushes, soap, and shoes and sandals. These last for the Libyans. The menu for the prisoners includes bread, macaroni, and potatoes, and when possible, fruit and vegetables. The Libyans have the diet they are used to, rice, lentils, and similar foods. All prisoners get regular issues of cigarettes or tobacco. By international convention, officer prisoners continue to draw in captivity the pay their rank entitled them to when in service. Altogether, keeping so many prisoners is an expensive business. The only British satisfaction on this score is that if the Italians lose the war, they can present the bill to Rome. London, January 7th. Waves of fast German fighter bombers gave London its longest and most destructive daytime attack in weeks today and killed and wounded a number of persons. Bombers caused some casualties in a heavy assault on an industrial Midland town, and other raiders, taking advantage of better flying conditions after being balked Monday night by snow and dirty weather, struck hard at East Anglia and the southeast coast. On the offensive, the British themselves were kept from reaching Germany last night by bad weather. Despite the severity of the London raid, residents of the capital continued their shopping and routine tasks, and Prime Minister Churchill and First Lord of the Admiralty, A.V. Alexander, surveyed damage caused at Trinity House and in the London Tower district in the fire raid of December 29th. A number of persons were killed and wounded in London when a salvo of bombs fell across a street. A streetcar was blown off its track, injuring 8 persons. The spire and main part of a Baptist church crashed. A motor showroom and a bank were demolished, trapping a number of persons in the wreckage. The raiders attacking the Midlands town demolished several houses in a suburb and killed or wounded several persons, it was reported. The Luftwaffe, a German Air Force, used its machine guns in many attacks. At many points, machine gun fire aloft indicated that British fighter planes were attacking the German raiders. Censorship was lifted to disclose that Broadcasting House, the home of the British Broadcasting Corporation in London, was seriously damaged in 2 recent air raids. Berlin, January 7th. Informed German sources said tonight that several bombs exploded in filtering apparatus and the boiler room of a celluloid factory southwest of London when a German plane attacked it this afternoon. A railway station and tracks in the Midlands were bombed from a low altitude, it was stated, and 2 hangars and a number of planes were hit at an airport north of London. One British Spitfire was reported shot down while trying to fight off German planes which were about to attack a steamer. Berlin, January 7th. Germany today disclaimed any responsibility for bombs dropped near Dublin the night of January 2nd and 3rd, but said it was possible that German planes might have flown over neutral Ireland the night of January 1st and 2nd, authorized sources said. The German government promised the Irish charge d'affaires in Berlin that it would continue negotiations concerning the flights and reported bombing and would offer regrets and reparations for possible damage if investigations showed German flyers were to blame. Of bomb fragments allegedly shown to be of German origin, a communique said, British lie agitation is at work to have this assertion appear as planful German challenge to Ireland. Of the second night's bombing, it added, suspicion arise that they were English bombs dropped with provocatory intentions after Churchill methods. Washington, D.C., January 7th. 4 types of American airplanes were commended for their valuable work in the Royal Air Force by British Air Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding at a press conference here today. Sir Hugh, who said he was in Washington to give any advice for which his service as Chief of the British Home Command has fitted him, also reaffirmed the opinion expressed by other British spokesmen that the time is past when Germany might open the way to invasion of England by winning mastery over the RAF. The outstanding type of American craft in British service at this time, he said, is the Hudson medium bomber, a modified Lockheed plane, which he said has performed most valuable service. Alongside this type, he rated the Glenn Martin medium bomber, which is just coming into use, and which carried the apparatus with which the British photographed the results of their raid on the Italian port of Taranto. Sir Hugh named the Douglas DB-7 attack bomber as a ship adaptable to 2 different roles. He declined to specify these roles, but stated that we regard this as a very useful type. One of its great advantages, he said, is its tricycle carriage, which I would say will be universal 2 years from now. It is particularly useful in night landings, in landing in crosswinds, or in landing in restricted spaces. You can put the brakes on hard without nosing it over. We expect to have many more before we finish. The Air Marshal mentioned one American type of small ship, the Curtiss fighters, while also citing this group as representative of the difficulties due to lack of standardization of planes in use by different countries. These ships, he said, were taken over after France, which originally ordered them, have collapsed. They required considerable rebuilding because of differences in controls which would confuse pilots. He particularly commended American navigation instruments, plane controls, and bomb sights. On the point of ultimate British victory, Sir Hugh was exceedingly confident. The people of England, he said, are filled with a cold anger and steely determination. If there is any fear, it is that their leaders may underestimate them and let them down with a patched-up peace. That fear is entirely groundless as long as Winston Churchill is Prime Minister. The Air Marshal declined to guess whether Germany plans an invasion. It is not possible while we retain command of the air, he said, and we have it. In a discussion of German pilots and equipment, Sir Hugh said that they generally have been excellent. No plane shot down, he said, has had inferior equipment or fuel, and their navigating instruments are extremely good. The Germans have gone all out, he added, and have used everything they could against England in the air. The German fighter pilots have kept morale up remarkably well despite very heavy losses. London, January 7th. The Air Ministry announced today that its Botha twin-engined torpedo bomber was off the full secret list of British warplanes. That means that the plane can now be mentioned, but that no details of its production or action against the Germans and Italians are yet permitted. The ministry's description of the craft stated that it is powered by two Perseus engines, has a span of 59 feet, a length of 50 feet 11 and 1/2 inches, and a height of 18 feet 3 inches. Washington, D.C., January 7th. British authorities have agreed to relax the blockade, reliable sources said tonight, to permit the American Red Cross to send some condensed milk to unoccupied France and wheat to Spain. The amount to be sent was not disclosed, but the Red Cross was reported to have planned to send a shipload of wheat to Spain. The shipments to unoccupied France, it was understood, will include condensed milk and vitamin products for French children. Finland also may receive some food shipments later, it was reported. The shipments presumably will be made in American vessels chartered by the Red Cross. Special neutrality legislation exempts Red Cross ships from the prohibition against entering combat zones. The last Red Cross ship sent to Europe was the McKeesport, which took cargo to Marseille last summer. The agreement between the British and American government was said to have been settled in principle, the broad question of sending supplies, but details of the arrangement remain to be worked out. This was believed to involve chiefly the message of distribution and handling to ensure that none of these supplies are diverted to German use. Hamilton, Bermuda, January 7th. British officials yesterday confiscated a large quantity of vitamin pills from Madame Elsa Schiaparelli, a fashion designer who is en route to France. The pills were gifts of Americans to the Friends Service Committee in Paris. The officials contended they were food and contraband. Madame Schiaparelli also was forced to give up $2,360. New York, January 7th. Officials of the American Friends Service Committee today said they were mystified by the action of the Bermuda customs officials. A spokesman said the vitamins were dispatched under a British Navicurt arranged by the British Council in New York. The council, the spokesman added, also was unable to understand the seizure, which it is said may have resulted from a misunderstanding. The concentrates, it was explained, were chiefly for the American and French members of the Friends staff in unoccupied France, although any surplus was intended for French persons under care of the Quaker workers. Madame Schiaparelli, it was said, merely happened to be going abroad and graciously agreed to act as the courier. Panama City, Panama, January 7th. Merchant vessels flying the Panama flag now total 1 million gross tons, state the newspaper La Tribuna, and 25 additional ships are awaiting completion of registration. Many American-owned vessels changed to Panamanian registry to escape restrictions placed by the Neutrality Act on ships under the American flag. New York, January 7th. More than 12,000 sacks of Christmas mail were lost on ships sunk while on the way to England in the 2 weeks before Christmas, Postmaster Albert Goldman disclosed today. The Western Prince, a 10,926-ton liner, went down off the Irish coast on December 14th with 6 passengers and 10 members of the crew lost. Also lost were 9,239 sacks of mail addressed to Great Britain, Ireland, Iceland, Malta, and the Faroe Islands. Sofia, Bulgaria, January 7th. Bulgaria looked to Russia again tonight for an answer to whether German troops massed along the northern frontier mean war or peace. Premier Bogdan Filov's return after a trip to Vienna, where he was officially reported to have sought medical treatment for a stomach ailment, shed no official light on the situation. He did not comment on the threat of a Nazi march across his country toward Greece and Turkey. Informed quarters, however, believed reluctance of both Russia and Germany to antagonize each other at the expense of their mutual tolerance would bring about a stalemate in the situation, as it did last fall when Bulgaria was unable to resist Berlin demands for adherence to the Axis. Germans continued to mass forces in Romania along the Danube frontier with Bulgaria. Romanians were said to have instructed to establish gasoline depots throughout the country by February 1st. Trainloads of collapsible barracks, along with great quantities of pontoon bridge materials, have arrived in Romania from Germany. Still unperturbed, the Bulgarian High Command granted many officers and soldiers leaves to observe the Greek Orthodox Christmas. Bulgaria is credited with having only 100,000 of its army of 500,000 under arms. Berlin, January 7th. The atmosphere here is loaded with rumors about the Balkans. Messages from Sofia state a new cabinet is being formed to carry out the agreement reached between Bulgaria and the Axis powers. Radical and pro-Nazi Bulgarians allege the days of Boris as king may be numbered. Others talk of the formation of a military cabinet in Sofia, which would strengthen German influence. Diplomats tell this story of Sofia. When Lord Lloyd of England called on King Boris, the monarch told him, "My friends and I are in sympathy with England, my army sympathizes with Germany, and our peasants are pro-Russian. Germans believe the chances of the Axis powers are good." Shanghai, January 7th. Reports from Bangkok that Thai forces had crossed the Mekong River to invade French Indochina today seemingly brought that border war to a more critical stage. Military observers here said the possibility of Japanese intervention was becoming stronger. Private advices from Hanoi, Indochina's capital, said the bulk of the Indo-Chinese army, estimated at 9,000 French troops, 70,000 natives, and 150 planes, was mobilized along the Thai border. Japanese forces are firmly established in northern Indochina. There was widespread feeling that the border conflict might offer an excuse for a Japanese invasion of Indochina, which might open the way for a southward thrust towards Singapore and the Dutch East Indies. Hanoi, French Indochina, January 7th. French authorities today expressed concern over a clash between Japanese and French troops at the entrance of Fort Hanoi Sunday, in which one of the latter was said to have been severely wounded. The skirmish occurred when 20 Japanese soldiers attempted to pass the guardhouse and were opposed by 6 French soldiers, officials said. London, January 7th. An official British statement regarding President Roosevelt's State of the Union said the message was regarded as an inspiration to the people and leaders of this country to pursue their struggle, fully confident that no shortage of war materials will delay or hamper their efforts to secure victory. Once again, it is noted that the president has reiterated his complete rejection of the possibility of acquiescence in peace dictated by aggressors. Berlin, January 7th. No official comment could be obtained in Berlin today on President Roosevelt's message to Congress. This noon, an authorized spokesman said that the full text of the speech was not in the hands of the Foreign Office because transmission disturbances occurred in the broadcast. He said no comment would be issued until the text had been studied. It was understood that German officialdom said the press will await word from Adolf Hitler before offering any concrete expressions on the speech. And as one diplomat put it, Hitler may take his time in studying Mr. Roosevelt's words. Some circles close to the government were of the opinion that the new speech does not differ greatly in its contents from the so-called fireside chat on Aid to Britain at the end of December, and therefore not much comment need be expected. Others maintained that it presented a chance for a good controversy on the more historical aspect of the present developments. Close students of German-American relations suggested that Roosevelt attempted to abolish the cash clause of the Neutrality Act, but that he made no effort to drop the carry clause. This, they said, reduced the danger of friction between the United States and Germany. Despite the reticence of the German news purveyors, the average Berliner is deeply engaged in discussion about the possibility of the United States being drawn into the war. Rome, January 7th. The Italian government itself refrained from comment about President Roosevelt's State of the Union address, but Virginia Gaeta, authoritative editor who often reflects high fascist opinion, said the president renewed the outworn, unproven theme of an Axis menace to America while assuring Americans of the material impossibility of an Axis attack. A statement handed to foreign correspondents said the impression in political circles was that the message constituted a declared will to ideological war in the field of internal politics and a patent reticence on the aims of the fight for maintenance of plutocratic and egotistic imperialisms. Tokyo, Japan, January 7th. A strong Japanese protest to Britain charging abuse of belligerent rights in the examination of Japanese transatlantic travelers at Bermuda was announced by the government today. British Ambassador Sir Robert Leslie Craigie received the protest from Foreign Minister Yasuki Matsuoka. Craigie was said originally to have sought the meeting to object to the asserted use of the Japanese flag by German raiders in the South Pacific. The Cabinet Information Bureau said Matsuoka's protest pointed out that measures taken by British authorities at Bermuda clearly are an abuse of belligerent rights and an illegal act infringing the legitimate rights and free movement of subjects of Japan, which is a neutral country. The foreign minister, it added, demanded that the British government promptly take satisfactory steps for settlement of the cases. 9 Japanese passengers arriving Saturday at Lisbon aboard the American export liner Excalibur said they were held in their cabins for 5 hours at Bermuda by British contraband control officers. They said their cash and traveler's checks were confiscated. A Domai Japanese news agency broadcast from Tokyo quoted reports that Japan also had decided on effective retaliation against unreasonable use of Navicure's, Britain's system of certifying cargoes in exporters' ports. Japan, Domai said, contends the use of Navicure's is a violation of international law and will protest every time Britain applies them to Japanese ships. Japan is conducting absolutely no trade negotiations with Russia, Japanese Bureau of Information spokesman said today. Negotiations were suspended, he said, after departure from Moscow of Shikai Matsushima, Japanese minister to Sweden, who went on to Stockholm. Matsushima's departure was said to have occurred some time ago, but the spokesman's comment today was the first indication in Japan that negotiations were not proceeding satisfactorily. This was in contrast with the enthusiasm displayed November 4th when Shigenori Togo, retiring as ambassador to Moscow, said a firm foundation already had been laid for settlement of outstanding Soviet-Japanese questions. The spokesman today added that several points still were pending on the Soviet-Japanese Fisheries Pact, which expired December 31st, and indicated only a one-year agreement remained probable. Tokyo, January 7th. The newspaper Nichi said President Roosevelt's address to Congress by declaring America should be the arsenal for the democratic powers might as well have declared a de facto war against the Axis powers. America will be forced to enter the war irrespective of American public opinion to remain neutral merely because of the frantic, unreasonable foreign policy of its irresponsible statesmen. Yomiuri said the presidential message drastically accelerated America's course toward participation in the war. Mexico City, January 7th. According to the newspaper El Popular, preliminary steps have been taken toward establishing the first Mexican naval and air base. The site selected is in the port of La Paz, the capital of the Southern District of Lower California. General Francisco J. Mojica, new military commander and governor of that district, has been placed in charge of the work. Mexico City, January 7th. The newspaper Ultimas Noticias in an editorial saying the United States had in fact already entered the European war today urged Mexican political leaders not to assume a yes man attitude in their relations with Washington. The paper said the United States had gone into the war by the modern custom of not declaring it. Compared with the military strength of our friend in Washington, ours is next to nothing, the paper said. However, with the moral support of 20 million Mexicans, if governed by intelligent and self-respecting statesmen, we can enact our own laws regardless of neighboring arsenals. We do not know what our statesmen are doing. Diplomacy remains secret. Ankara, Turkey, January 7th. Aware of the big German army now in Romania, the Turkish government acted today to keep mobilized all of her troops now under arms. The Assembly passed the government's bill prolonging service for all classes under arms, including recruits 21 years old and over. The number of men affected is not publicly known. It was reported at Sofia, Bulgaria, that Turkey has 400,000 men along Bulgaria's southern frontier ready to march in to meet any German thrust. Lisbon, Portugal, January 7th. Harry Hopkins, President Roosevelt's personal emissary, arrived here today aboard the Yankee Clipper for an overnight stay before continuing on to London to see Prime Minister Winston Churchill. I don't have to fool with that stuff, he said, emphasizing again he was not acting as an ambassador to the court of St. James. Cairo, Egypt, January 7th. Colonel William J. Donovan, on an undisclosed mission from the United States, arrived tonight in Cairo by plane from London. While he declined to discuss the purpose of his visit, it was understood he will furnish the American government with a first-hand account of the situation and of operations in the Middle Eastern War Theater. He is staying at the British Embassy. Vichy, France, January 7th. American Ambassador William D. Leahy today said he expected to present his credentials and a personal letter from President Roosevelt to Chief of State Henry Philippe Pétain tomorrow. Receiving the press for the first time since his arrival, Leahy said he had no special mission to the French government except as an ambassador. Washington, D.C., January 7th. The State Department today disclosed that it had revoked the license of the United American Spanish Aid Committee to collect funds in the United States for use in belligerent countries. The revocation, effective December 15th, did not apply, officials said, to those activities of the committee relating to refugee and resettlement work over which the State Department has no supervision. A project of the committee apparently unaffected by the license revocation was the American Rescue Ship mission, in connection with which Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt and some other prominent persons were reported by New York newspapers to have resigned as sponsors. The announced object of the rescue ship mission was to raise $300,000 with which to charter a ship and transfer Spanish Republican refugees from France to Mexico. London, January 7th. 1 million British arms workers today placed before an arbitration tribunal their plea for a wage increase of 3 pence or 5 cents an hour to meet rising living costs. Representatives of the Amalgamated Engineering Union with 500,000 members were the first to be heard. The General Engineering Trades Union, representing another 500,000 workers, will be heard tomorrow. London, January 7th. Food Minister Lord Woolton disclosed today that another cut in the meat ration, now reduced to 1 shilling 6 pence a head, about 30 cents, may be necessary. He expressed the belief, however, that the shortage of meat is temporary and an improvement may be expected shortly. On the other hand, he clamped down on food profiteering in numerous commodities heretofore uncontrolled. Prices were fixed at those prevailing last December 2nd for the manufacturer, wholesale, retailer, or any other dealer and include the following: coffee, cocoa, chocolate, canned or bottled vegetables, canned pork and beans, honey, meat paste, fish, poultry, meat and other edible extracts, shredded suet, rice, tapioca, sage, macaroni, spaghetti vermicelli, biscuits, soups, tinned, bottled, powdered, or processed cheese, pickles, sauces, relishes, custard, table jellies, and edible nuts. Berlin, January 7th. DNB, official German news agency, said in a dispatch from Paris today that drastic penalties to combat crime, including execution within 24 hours after arrest, had been announced by authorities there. Police in the German-occupied French capital were concerned particularly, the agency reported, over an increase in crimes committed during blackouts. It said a summary court had been established and immediate execution threatened for persons using weapons and carrying out any criminal acts. Geneva, Switzerland, January 7th. The manner in which Adolf Hitler's war machine took over industry and conquered lands and organized it to satisfy the needs of Germany was disclosed recently in the Deutsche Volkswirt, authoritative German economic journal. The article bore the title, "The New Arm of the Service." For the purpose of engaging in a total war, the Germans created an industrial mobilization staff as early as 1935. Later, this office became known as the Industrial Mobilization and Armament Office. Operating directly under the High Command, it is now composed of engineers, men experienced in commercial pursuits, and army officers who for years were schooled in cooperating with industry. The general duties of industrial mobilization in past German conquests have been cited as follows. Number 1, units support the fighting forces in every possible way. Number 2, they seize and preserve supplies of raw materials and manufactured articles. Number 3, they register and survey all factories which might be useful to German armies and preserve them for future operations. Number 4, they collect all armament left on the field of battle. In the battle for France, personnel of these units advance behind the fighting troops and operate in such a way so as to give the fighting troops maximum assistance. They sought to hinder the destruction of valuable plants and material which the troops, through carelessness, might allow to be destroyed. It was also the duty of economic officers and their staffs to prevent the flooding of mines and abandonment by troops of valuable food supplies and war materials, as well as to start operation of power and gas plants and waterworks. In order to organize this work, an officer of industrial mobilization was added to the staff of each army in the field. This officer was assisted by a technical unit. These technical units sought to supplement the supplies of the troops, maintain order and calm behind the front, and transform captured industry into an asset of the German army. In case of extreme emergency, the units repaired damaged bridges or power plants which were essential to the fighting forces, but in general, the repair work was done by Hitler's labor battalions. After the armistice with France, the staff of industrial mobilization was increased because of the necessity of organizing all of France militarily and industrially. Finally, the organization was incorporated into the general administration of the conquered country. At the head of the organization is a man whose title is Chief of Industrial Mobilization and Armament of France. Subordinate to the chief are armament inspectors, purchasing agents, technical units, and salvage companies. Occupied France is divided into 5 areas for purpose of administration. There are headquarters in Paris, Dijon, Bordeaux, Angers, and Saint-Germain. The commander of each area has an officer of industrial mobilization on his staff. This officer, in addition to supervising seizure of factories and putting them into operation, must retain material immediately useful to German troops in France. Other material is shipped to Germany. He also supervises war industry in occupied France. According to reports from Germany, armament factories of Western Europe are gradually resuming production. From time to time, it is said that new reserves of French raw materials and valuable machinery are discovered. Whenever the machinery is considered vital, industrial mobilization packs it and sends it to Germany. In all, raw materials to the amount of 160,000 tons have been sent to Germany, Volkswirt said. If machinery can produce more goods more cheaply in France than in Germany, it is left in France. That Germans prefer to make use of labor in France was indicated by the journal's comment, "Busy Frenchmen are less likely than idle Frenchmen to disturb the peace." Industrial mobilization officers, it is maintained, do not actually operate French factories. However, German commissars have been placed in each factory to keep an eye on production and control it when it is necessary. These Germans also examine and inspect the products which are made under contracts given these factories by German firms. Berlin, January 7th. Informed sources today said an American monument in Brest, France, erected in commemoration of the landing of the first United States troops there in 1917, was destroyed by British bombs the night of January 4th. No other details of the raid on the German-occupied port were given. Berlin, January 7th. Captain Charles Davis Morgan, an American citizen who was a Harvard University chum of President Roosevelt, is in a German prison camp with little chance of release. He was captured last June while fighting with the British in the Battle of Flanders. His plight was disclosed today by the United States Embassy. Morgan, a 56-year-old attorney, is the husband of the former Louise Warfield of Baltimore, Maryland, a cousin of the Duchess of Windsor. Embassy sources said friends had carried his case to the White House, but under international law, he is considered a British soldier because he took part in combat as such. His predicament thus is distinguished from that of American ambulance drivers who are non-combatants who have been released. The Germans were said to have indicated a willingness to release Morgan, except that it might set a precedent for similar treatment to American pilots they expect may be downed while piloting British planes. Morgan, a native of Plymouth, Massachusetts, was a fellow editor of President Roosevelt in college days on the Harvard Crimson. He fought with the British in the World War and was severely wounded. The British government awarded him several medals. After the World War, Morgan built a lucrative law practice in Paris. He joined the British Army again in January 1940, received a captain's commission, and was made liaison officer between the British and French in Flanders. Embassy representatives who visited him at a German prison camp near Salzburg in Bavaria said he told them he refrained from swearing allegiance to the king when he joined the British Army because he did not want to lose his American citizenship. For a time, he concealed his nationality by describing himself as Canadian-born, but subsequently revealed that he was an American, a fact confirmed by his passport, which was left in Paris. Morgan explained that he hid his American citizenship because he feared he would be taken from his friends in the British officers' camp and interned with British civilians. Budapest, Hungary, January 7th. The Transport Board today announced that buses must have charcoal burning equipment installed to save gasoline. Moscow, January 7th. The government organ Izvestia today announced that Russian oil production in 1940 fell short of the year's plan, although it exceeded the 1939 output. Nairobi, Kenya Colony, January 8th. Lord Baden-Powell, 83 years old, founder of the Boy Scout movement, died today at Nyeri, his home in Kenya Colony. He had been reported critically ill in November, but after 2 weeks was said to be much improved. Lord Baden-Powell, a lineal descendant of the early American settler John Smith, had resided in Africa since 1937 when he was forced by failing health to abandon his active life in London. At the time of his departure for Nyeri, he told friends, "I've had a long inning. I'd rather die in Africa where my heart is than anywhere." His home at Nyeri, where he spent his last days, was a bungalow on the slopes of Mount Kenya, where he was able to live much in the open air, a practice which he had long recommended as the secret of good health. He was indefatigable traveler during his long career and had 3 round-the-world voyages in addition to touring the United States in 1912 and again in 1930. He was in the United States again in 1935. He underwent 2 serious operations in London in 1934, but his vigorous constitution speeded his recovery despite his 77 years. In 1937, before his departure for Africa, Lord Baden-Powell was on the coronation honors list, receiving the Order of Merit from the new crowned King George VI. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the number one song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And now for national news. Washington, D.C., January 7th. Following hard upon the threats to industry uttered by the president in his message to Congress yesterday, the administration today cracked down on steel and iron scrap dealers with a demand that they reduce prices or suffer the consequences of official displeasure. Leon Henderson of the Defense Advisory Commission informed the dealers that he would recommend drastic steps unless they voluntarily reduce the price of scrap several dollars a ton. Representatives of the trade, said Henderson afterward, agreed with government authorities that current prices of scrap are several dollars a ton higher than is necessary to bring out the tonnage required to support present capacity of the steel industry. The ultimate object of the price reduction requested is to bring the market to a level not to exceed $20 a ton for number one heavy melting steel scrap at Pittsburgh. Indications were that the dealers will comply with the demand rather than risk a collision with the government. There have been rumors for several days that the administration contemplates the expropriation of one or more large aircraft companies on the charge of obstruction of the National Defense Program. The rumors appear to have originated in a remark by the president that he was investigating charges involving one or two concerns. The tendency of the bureaucracy is to blame industry for the lagging production of aircraft. Last November, Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson made a public complaint that the Douglas Aircraft Company was pushing the production of commercial airplanes at the expense of the production of military planes. Douglas officials promptly produced figures to demonstrate the charge untrue. War Department officials today denied there is any thought of taking over the Douglas or any other aircraft factory under the powers conferred on the president by the last Congress. The president indicated in his message that he proposes to invoke drastic dictatorial powers against any persons or groups that he deems obstructive of the national effort. A free nation, he said, has the right to expect full cooperation from all groups. A free nation has the right to look to the leaders of business, of labor, and of agriculture to take the lead in stimulating effort, not among other groups, but within their own groups. The best way of dealing with the few slackers or troublemakers in our midst is, first, to shame them by patriotic example, and if that fails, to use the sovereignty of government to save government. Under his emergency powers, the president possesses authority to take over any factory that does not comply with government orders, build any facilities needed for national defense, buy any military supplies without bids, introduce price fixing in effect by regulating prices paid for government orders, charge the dollar value, thus altering wages, prices, and profits, forbid the Federal Reserve core of the banking system to do business, take over houses, dams, conduits, and reservoirs, tell public utilities what power connections they shall make, how much power to generate and deliver, when and where to deliver it, suspend the 8-hour day on national contracts, call out the National Guard and, if needed, use its members to break a strike, requisition any American vessel, control the radio, telegraph, and telephone systems, require railroads to give right-of-way to government shipments, lend money to any firm for any national defense purpose, embargo products of nations that discriminate against United States products, and shut national securities exchanges for 90 days or suspend trading in any security. New York, January 7th. Officially confirming the steel industry's expansion to the greatest production level in history, the American Iron and Steel Institute reported today output of open hearth and Bessemer steel ingots for 1940 totaled 65,246,953 net tons. This was 7% higher than the previous peak of 60,829,752 tons set in 1929 and exceeded by 26% the 1939 figure of 51,584,986 tons. In producing its record output last year, said the Institute, the steel industry operated at an average of 82.22% of capacity based on December 31st, 1939 capacity. In 1929, operations averaged 89.05%. During 1939, the industry operated at an average of 64.70%. During the final quarter last year, the industry operated at an average of 95.49% of capacity. December ingot production was 6,300,768 tons against 6,282,824 tons in November and 5,822,014 tons in December 1939. The rate of operations in December was 93.92% of capacity against 96.49% in November and 86.13% in December last year. Detroit, Michigan, January 7th. Major General F.B. Gregory, Quartermaster General of the United States Army, told the Society of Automotive Engineers tonight that his department expects to obtain delivery of more than 250,000 motor vehicles between now and late summer. Today, he said, we have about 40,000 motor vehicles in service. By March, we expect to have around 140,000, and by the end of the fiscal year, about 190,000. In addition, there will remain about 60,000 more vehicles to be delivered during the late summer or early fall. General Gregory itemized the various types of vehicles needed and the uses to which they will be put. He outlined the Army's overall program with regard to motor transportation as calling for as much standardization as possible and limiting the number of types and models to the minimum consistent with sources of supply, mass production, interchangeability, and cost. There is no place in the present plans for the slow-moving ponderous vehicles that formerly were used, he said. Our trucks must travel 40 or 50 miles an hour or faster by day and at 15 to 20 miles an hour at night without lights. Some military requirements, he added, force a departure from commercial standards in motor vehicles. He mentioned adjustable windshields, radiator and headlight brush guards, blackout lighting equipment, towing hooks and pintles, military-type front and rear fenders, and special spare tire and gasoline tank mountings. To be satisfactory, he said, all the vehicles should be able to climb a grade of 40 to 50 degrees and to move out at angles ranging from 30 to 45 degrees. The Army motor fleet will be divided approximately as follows: 27,000 motorcycles, 4,500 midget cars or quarter-ton trucks, 5,900 passenger cars, 3,400 ambulances, 69,000 half-ton trucks, pickup and reconnaissance, 44,000 1.5-ton trucks, 58,000 2.5-ton trucks, 3,800 each of 4 tons and 6-ton trucks, and 37,800 2.5-ton trucks, tractors with 1 trailer each. There is room for development of a peacetime use of four-wheel drive vehicles of all sizes, said General Gregory. For example, the quarter-ton truck might be developed into a combination tractor and truck for use by the farmers. The quarter-ton vehicle is to be used mainly for the transport of light weapons for the infantry. Washington, D.C., January 7th. Representatives of the National Machine Tool Makers Association met here today and denounced the indecision and vagueness of the administration as responsible for the chaotic conditions in the machine tool industry. Machine tools are necessary to fashion war materials in factories. The lack of proper tools is admittedly one of the chief reasons for the delay in the defense program. A spokesman for the association, which held held secret sessions in an attempt to discover new methods of speeding production, declared that the failure of the Army and Navy to inform machine tool makers of exact needs for future production is preventing planned expansion. Washington, D.C., January 7th. G. DeFriest Larner, general manager of the National Aeronautic Association, warned tonight of danger to the national defense effort in the air if inexpert theorists prevail over the Council of Qualified Aviation Experts. The president's statement in his annual message as to delays in plane production makes it plain that drastic steps are just ahead to speed the output of airplanes and aircraft motors, Larner said. Already there are rumors that this responsibility will be given to one individual similar to Lord Beaverbrook of England. Meanwhile, the experts near experts and those who know nothing at all about the technicalities of aircraft production are flooding the press and the airwaves with criticisms of our air efforts. There may be certain processes, shortcuts, and techniques in the automobile industry which can be applied to aviation. When the future safety of our nation may hinge upon the effectiveness of our air defense, it is no time to take from the aviation industry and place in other hands the primary responsibility for aircraft and airplane engine production. Washington, D.C., January 7th. The State Department disclosed today that it issued export licenses for only $6,016,936 worth of war materials to Great Britain in November, bringing the total for 11 months to $595,240,355. At the same time, the Department of Commerce reported that total exports to the United Kingdom in November amounted to $102,375,000, compared with $107,802,000 in October and only $31,488,000 in November 1939. The arms shipments licensed in November included $2,016,660 for high explosives, $1,490,000 for fighting planes, $527,049 for heavy guns, and $621,805 for automatic pistols. Washington, D.C., January 7th. The Federal Works Administration announced today that the United States Housing Authority had been assigned construction of 500 housing units at the Corpus Christi, Texas Naval Air Station. FWA Administrator John M. Carmody said that the assignment of this project and 4 more in other cities was based on a finding by the president that an acute shortage of housing which would impede national defense activities exists or impedes in the localities, and that such housing would not be provided by private capital when needed. New York, January 7th. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York today reported that no shipments of United States currency were made to Europe during December, the first month without such shipments in more than 6 years. A total of $177,000 was sent to Latin America and to Canada. Receipts of United States currency from abroad during December amounted to $870,000, including $120,000 from Germany. New York, January 7th. Frank M. Belenka, airplane designer, today announced plans for building a $2 million plane factory in Mexico City capable of turning out dive bombers at the rate of 2 a day. American Capital will finance the venture, and it will be the first unit ever built in Latin America to put military aircraft into high-speed production, he said. If all goes as planned, we will be in production within 5 or 6 months on a site at Balbuena Field in Mexico City, he said. We will concentrate first on the output of the Belenka CCC-Y-1, a dive bomber with a horizontal speed of 350 miles an hour. I have already received 2 large preliminary orders from 2 foreign powers friendly to Britain. Washington, D.C., January 7th. John P. Coyne, head of the American Federation of Labor Building Trades Department, announced tonight that 19 building trades union officials had agreed to fix minimum fees for initiations into unions and to pursue a policy of no strikes in building construction under the defense program. Coyne told newspapermen after a meeting of building trades officials that because of recent charges that some fees were exorbitant, the leaders of the construction unions had voted to establish universal maximum fees for new workers employed on defense projects. Previously, he said fees customarily have been fixed by the local unions. In some cases, he said the new plan will mean the lowering of initiation fees. The Common Laborers Union, he declared, already has fixed a minimum of $15. Washington, D.C., January 7th. President Roosevelt today signed and issued the executive and administrative orders creating an Office of Production Management, the new super defense agency, which is to speed and correlate the American rearmament program. William S. Knutson, automobile executive who has been serving on the 7-man Defense Advisory Commission, was named Director General of the new super agency. Sidney Hillman, CIO Vice President and Clothing Workers Union Chief, who also was a member of the 7-man board, was named Associate Director General. The other two members are Secretary of War Henry L. Stimson and Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox. Mr. Roosevelt disclosed that in the final analysis, he will be the big boss when he acknowledged that Knutson and Hillman may come in and ask him about various questions now and then. Chapel Hill, North Carolina, January 7th. William C. Bullitt, former New Deal ambassador to France and a leading war interventionist, admitted in a speech here tonight that the American people are so opposed to war they would risk a totalitarian victory rather than enter the conflict. Speaking before the International Relations Club of the University of North Carolina, his first speech since he resigned from government service, Bullitt dwelt long on methods for diminishing the risk of an Axis victory. The former ambassador has been denounced by Senate non-interventionists as the foremost alarmist and warmonger of the Roosevelt administration. After an inflammatory speech in Philadelphia last August, he was called a slacker in the World War, a former communist sympathizer, and a meddler who sought to involve the United States in the present war by commitments to France. In his talk tonight, Bullitt said American aid to Britain, Greece, and China involve slight danger of war. He said the United States must give those nations what they need, not what we think we can comfortably spare. It is so greatly to the advantage of the totalitarian states to have us stay out of war while they are attempting to conquer Great Britain, Greece, and China, he said, that they will almost certainly not make war on us so long as Great Britain stands, no matter how much material aid we supply and no matter what form that aid may take. Washington, D.C., January 7th. Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt said today she was astonished and saddened by the lack of applause from the Republican sector when President Roosevelt addressed Congress on the State of the Union. Mrs. Roosevelt heard the speech yesterday from a box in the House gallery above the section where the Republicans sat. Asked at her press conference about her reactions, she said she thought the 4 principles enumerated by the president as this country stand for world peace, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom from want, freedom from fear, were principles you could applaud regardless of party affiliation. It might be, she said, that the lack of Republican applause was a purely personal reaction to the individual, but added that after all, the president does represent the choice of the people. It must be possible to rise above personal feeling. New York, January 7th. The American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers and the radio networks have agreed that the broadcast of the inauguration of President Roosevelt on January 20th will not be affected by their controversy. ASCAP automatically allows use of its music free of charge on non-commercial programs of an educational nature, a policy ensuring the radio stations of freedom from any legal complications during the ceremonies. ASCAP controls the bulk of American military music, including the works of John Philip Sousa, which ordinarily is played in the inaugural parade. ASCAP announced the formation of an orchestra consisting of 17 of its composers, headed by Al Lewis, author of Blueberry Hill. Most of the composers have been represented at one time or another on the Hit Parade program and will bill themselves as the Hit Parade writers and their orchestra. Washington, D.C., January 7th. A grand jury investigating contributions and expenditures of the 1940 presidential campaign has summoned William Rhodes Davis, international oil operator, to appear before it Thursday. Davis recently was reported to have submitted to the State Department an agenda for peace in the European war. Justice Department attorneys did not say why Davis was being called, but Senator Burton K. Wheeler, Democrat Montana, said yesterday he had been told that Davis was a contributor to the campaign of Wendell L. Willkie. The senator also said he understood the oil man was a heavy contributor to the 1936 Democratic campaign. Yesterday, Davis received permission to testify soon before a Senate subcommittee headed by Wheeler after Senator Josh Lee, Democrat Oklahoma, charged that the reported peace agenda was in reality an attempt by Davis to obtain a phony peace to pull Germany's chestnuts out of the fire. Lee made his charge after Vern Marshall, head of the No Foreign War Committee, reported that Davis had brought the agenda here. New Orleans, Louisiana, January 7th. Immigration authorities today arrested Joseph George Strecker, Austrian-born alien who was saved from deportation as a communist by a Supreme Court decision in 1939 in a case that assumed national importance. Acting under the 1940 Alien Act, agents took him in custody in Hot Springs, Arkansas, where he had operated a restaurant since 1919. He was put on a train for New Orleans to face new deportation proceedings. The Alien Registration Act, which became law last July, also provides that aliens may be deported if at any time after entry into the United States they were members of an organization advocating overthrow of the government. The Supreme Court freed Strecker on the grounds of insufficient evidence that he advocated the overthrow. Eugene Kessler, director of the District Immigration and Naturalization Headquarters, said Strecker will be given an administrative hearing on charges that he is an alien. That as an alien, he is a member of the Communist Party, which advocates overthrow of the existing government by force and violence. Strecker, 52 years old, came to the United States in 1912. He worked in coal mines and steel mills before entering the restaurant business. Several months after he applied for naturalization in 1933, government agents arrested him for deportation, charging that as a communist agitator he was an undesirable alien. Strecker admitted he had paid dues to the Communist Party in 1932, but insisted he had quit it after a few months. His case was fought through the courts for 6 years. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, January 7th. An inquiry into the death of 5 aged patients at the Philadelphia State Hospital was coupled today with a warning from the institution's head that a catastrophe might occur unless physical repairs are made. The district attorney's office, the coroner, and the State Department of Welfare joined in the investigation after Coroner Charles Hirsch reported the deaths were preceded by unexplained injuries. The Welfare Department ordered the fingerprinting of 4,000 employees of all Pennsylvania institutions for the feeble-minded, following revelation that a man who had been paroled from the Huntington Industrial School was found working in Byberry, the Philadelphia hospital. He was discharged. Newton, New Jersey, January 7th. Wilhelm Kunz, National German-American Bund leader, and 8 associates were ordered today to appear for sentence before Judge John C. Losey of the Sussex County Court, who upheld indictment charging them with promoting race hatred against people of the Jewish religion. John Winans, attorney for the 9, immediately announced he would carry on the fight. He was expected to appeal after the jurist passes sentence on January 31st under statutes permitting prison terms of 3 years and fines of $5,000 each. The demurrers filed by Winans, the defendants, admitted the facts set forth in the indictments, but contended the laws under which they were brought were unconstitutional. The indictments were returned last October as the result of a rally at the Boone's Camp Nordland. Miami, Florida, January 7th. Protesting they probably would be shot, 8 escapees from the Devil's Island penal colony were placed aboard a Coast Guard cutter today for deportation to Vichy-controlled Martinique. One man, Louis J., was carried aboard after being given a sedative to quiet his nerves. Immigration Inspector W.D. Thomas said GA had been on a hunger strike. The men had hoped to the last minute they would be permitted to join General Charles de Gaulle's Free French forces to fight on the Allied side. The 8 men arrived here in a small boat last August 24th after making their way from the French penal colony off the northeast coast of South America. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the #1 song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And now for local and regional news. William B. Benton, Vice President of the University of Chicago, proposed last night that Americans state their views on British war credits in business terms to discover for themselves whether they favor loans or outright gifts to Great Britain. He suggested that the United States ask the British government to ship the priceless collections of the British Museum here for collateral if there is any serious intention of asking repayment of war loans. If Americans shrink from that, he said, they will know that their somewhat nebulous discussion of credits to Britain means gifts to Britain. If they feel that asking the British to hock their museum is good business, they will know they are talking about loans which are to be repaid. Similarly, Benton said it would be apparent that the British want loans if they are willing to ship their museum collections. If the idea fails to interest them, they will have clarified their own minds on the fact that they are asking for gifts. Benton said the example is well chosen to illustrate his point because the transaction would be irreproachable from the point of view of good business. The financial value of the museum is beyond estimate, but Benton said the figure would run into the billions. The plan, moreover, would not impair British financing in any way. Chicago companies shared in defense orders yesterday to an amount slightly exceeding $650,000 as Detroit got the lion's share of the day's Navy contracts. The War Department announced contracts to the 2 Chicago companies as follows. Barco Manufacturing Company, profitable gas hammers, $394,542, and the American Automatic Electric Sales Company, telephone central office equipment, $259,038. Other War Department contracts included Gillen Woodworking Corporation, Milwaukee for chess, $192,594. General Electric Company, Erie, Pennsylvania, locomotives, $135,225. Art Neckwear Company, Philadelphia, $500,000. Black wool neckties, $109,909. And the Crawford Austin Manufacturing Company, Incorporated, Waco, Texas, 3,200 pyramidal tents, $155,296. Expansion of 3 large Chicago companies caused them to buy larger quarters yesterday. Andy's Candies Incorporated, which operates 56 stores in Chicago, purchased the 3-story factory building on the west side of North Clark Street, south of Sunnyside Avenue, for $60,000, according to revenue stamps on the deed. The Charles L. Schrager Company represented all parties. The building, constructed in 1930 by Cushman Sons Incorporated for bakery use at a reported cost of $460,000, will be used by Andy's for its main candy kitchens, now at 357 North Central Park Avenue. Containing 60,000 square feet of floor space, it will more than triple the present manufacturing area. Lieutenant Colonel Oscar Randall, a mathematics teacher at the DuSable High School, was appointed commanding officer yesterday of the 184th Field Artillery Regiment, Negro Regiment of the Illinois National Guard, which was inducted into federal service on Monday. Colonel Randall, the third commander the regiment has had in 2 months, succeeds Colonel Julian Dawson, who in turn succeeded Colonel William Warfield early in December. The 184th Field Artillery, organized last September from Chicago's former 8th Infantry, will spend its year of training at Camp Custer near Battle Creek, Michigan. A first contingent of 120 men and officers will leave for the camp Friday, and the rest of the regiment will follow in the next few days. Washington, D.C., January 7th. Construction of hospital facilities at Fort Sheridan, Illinois, was authorized today by the War Department. The facilities, cantonment type, will cost approximately $295,500 and provide 184 to 269 beds. Contracts have not been awarded. 500 men from the Chicago area will begin a 3-month course in military training Friday night at the University of Chicago Fieldhouse. The course is designed to give the civilian a practical knowledge of Army fundamentals and procedure. It is the second of a series of preparedness courses offered in cooperation with the university by leading Chicago business and professional men who received a month's training last summer at Fort Sheridan as members of the Special Businessmen's Battalion of the Citizens Military Training Camp. It is open to men of any age or occupation interested in military preparedness. Governor-elect Dwight H. Green and an advisory committee of prominent Illinoisans met yesterday in Green's office at 231 South LaSalle Street and took preliminary steps toward reconstruction of the Illinois Highway Police Force on a merit basis. Brigadier General Thomas S. Hammond of Aurora was chosen chairman of the committee. Other members are Professor Ernest W. Puttkemer, professor of law at the University of Chicago, Colonel Henry Barrett Chamberlain, operating director of the Chicago Crime Commission, Charles C. Fitzmaurice, former Chicago Police Commissioner, and Robert L. Gordon of Urbana, who is well known as a labor leader. Springfield, Illinois, January 7th. Complete harmony among Republicans in the 62nd Illinois General Assembly was assured tonight in the House and Senate caucuses preliminary to convening of the regular biennial session tomorrow noon. Ernest J. Scheckenberg, 13th Ward of Chicago, was the unanimous choice of his 78 associates for Speaker of the House of Representatives. Arnold P. Benson, 14th District of Batavia, similarly received the solid vote of the other 27 Republicans for President pro tempore of the Senate. For some of the secondary posts in both houses, there were slight contests, but there was no sign of bad feeling in any of them, and in all instances, the candidates informally agreed upon by the leaders during the day were the winners in both caucuses. A political time bomb set to explode today was revealed yesterday in plans of Indiana Republicans to contest the election of Governor-elect Henry F. Schricker, the only Democratic state candidate declared a winner in the November 5th election. Leaders of both major political parties in Indiana were surprised by the announcement. Charges that Schricker won his 3,478 vote margin over Glenn R. Hillis, the Republican candidate, by means of the votes of aliens, are contained in the contest petition, which will be filed this afternoon with presiding officers of the Indiana legislature in Indianapolis. A secret 5-week investigation of the alien voter situation in Lake County paved the way for the challenge of Schricker's apparent victory. Former Judge Virgil E. Whitaker of Hammond directed a staff of 40 persons in the search for evidence, and it is he, as a voter, who will file the contest petition. Detroit, Michigan, January 7th. William S. Lippman, 34 years old, vice president and general manager of the Lippman Construction Company of Chicago, was named today in a grand jury warrant charging perjury. Lippman is in Chicago under $1,000 bond since being released 2 weeks ago after having been jailed on suspicion of perjury. His attorney, H.J. Rosenberg, who is in Detroit, said Lippman will be here as soon as the law requires. You don't think we're going to forfeit a $1,000 bond, do you? Rosenberg concluded. The warrant for Lippman was issued by Circuit Judge Homer Ferguson, sitting as a one-man grand jury. Judge Ferguson has been investigating charges that bribes were offered to influence the Detroit City Council to award the $8,300,000 Herman Gardens federal housing project contract to the Lippman Company and the A. Smith Company, also of Chicago, on their joint bid. Investigation of Chicago's gangster-controlled unions by a committee of the Illinois legislature was reported to be under consideration yesterday as an aftermath of the court battle involving Local 278 of the Bartenders Union. State's Attorney Thomas J. Courtney announced that the union election held Monday in the courtroom of Circuit Judge Robert Jerome Dunn by no means would end his campaign to drive members of the gangs led by Frank the Enforcer Nitti and Danny Public Enemy Stanton out of organized labor. The balloting resulted in the election of James Crowley as president of the Bartenders Union. Courtney and his aides said they were pleased with the defeat of George B. McLean, who was a candidate for re-election as business agent of the union. McLean was defeated by Joseph McElligott, an unemployed bartender. Charges that two officials of the International Alliance of Bill Posters, Billers, and Distributors, AFL, are affiliated with criminal underworld gangs and labor racketeers in Chicago and St. Louis were made yesterday in affidavits filed in the federal district court. The International Alliance is defendant in a suit for injunction brought by the Chicago local alleging that officials of the International have threatened to kill officers of the local and have committed numerous acts of violence in an effort to seize control of the local. Affidavits were filed by the majority of the plaintiffs in support of their original bill. Frank J. Parker, the airplane bootlegger who was reputed to have made millions in the Prohibition era, has requested a pardon that would free him from the necessity of spending a year in the Cook County Jail. The State Board of Pardons and Paroles in Springfield yesterday also received a petition with 3,000 signatures asking the release of Martin Durkin Jr., Chicago gunman who killed a federal agent. The petition was submitted by 3 evangelists. Parker's letter requesting a pardon was dated in the federal prison at Leavenworth, Kansas, where he has served nearly all of a 2-year sentence for counterfeiting. He was convicted in April 1939 in the federal court here. In May of the same year, he and George Bugs Moran, a notorious gangster, were tried in the criminal court for forging and passing bogus express company money orders. Harold Rose, an ex-convict, was found guilty of murder by a jury in the criminal court of Judge John A. Sabaro late last night. His punishment was fixed at life imprisonment. Judge Sabaro immediately sentenced him to prison. Rose, 25 years old, was convicted of slaying Herman Cleese, age 66, in the latter's gasoline filling station at 7951 Addison Street last October 22nd. Rose admitted beating Cleese to death, but insisted he did so in self-defense. The two had quarreled over a debt, he said. Terre Haute, Indiana, January 7th. Burglars broke into the garage of Ira Hall Auto Racer last night and threw a party while cracking the safe from which they took $800. Scattered about were several empty whiskey and soft drink bottles. Leaders of the City Council Finance Committee during a 5-hour conference yesterday renewed their determination to recommend a 10% cut in pay of the city's union employees for 1941. The decision marked a stiffening of their attitude on Monday when they were reported to have taken under consideration a compromise plan for a 5% reduction. The 10% pay cut proposal, which brought a strike threat from union leaders, is one of several economy measures designed to keep the city's budget within anticipated revenues. Council leaders have predicted a return of payless days unless the city reduces its spending. Mayor Kelly was present at yesterday's long conference of the Budget Subcommittee of the Finance Group. After the meeting, he steadfastly refused to discuss the alderman's decision, except to say the subcommittee has not receded from its position, but there may be some slight modifications, which it will talk over with union leaders. While the mayor declined to explain what he meant by slight modifications, it was learned that this may mean that the budget will include pay cuts for non-union city workers who receive annual salaries greater than a certain minimum. No city can grapple effectively with its housing problem unless it has an intelligent city plan, an adequate zoning system, and sound housing and building laws well enforced. Bleecker Marquette, consultant of the Cincinnati, Ohio Metropolitan Housing Authority, made this assertion yesterday at a joint luncheon meeting of the National Association of Housing Officials at the Metropolitan Housing Council of Chicago in the Hotel LaSalle. Lacking these, new slums can develop more rapidly than we can wipe out the old, he said. Only a small percentage of the families badly housed in our urban communities can be provided for in government housing projects for a good many years. Actual removal of the streetcar tracks, poles, and wires on South Cicero Avenue adjoining the Chicago airport was begun yesterday by workers for the Chicago Surface Lines. This marks the final step in the city's 1.5 year fight for the removal on the ground that the poles and wires were a hazard to planes using the airport. Mayor Kelly announced yesterday that in Washington Monday he had been assured of federal aid in the city's plan to erect a new terminal building at the airport. He said the RFC would loan $1 million and the WPA would approve a necessary $413 project if the airlines agreed to contribute $400,000. The mayor said the airlines have virtually agreed to do this. Meanwhile, engineers for the Chicago and Western Indiana Railroad said the new railroad tracks north of the enlarged Chicago airport site will be ready for use in 2 or 3 months. Tracks now bisecting the airport will be removed at that time, doubling the size of the field. The rapidly expanding use of plastics will increase rather than reduce the use of metal, Dr. A. Bates, manager of chemical and metallurgical research for the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company, East Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, said yesterday. He spoke before the Chicago section of the Association of Iron and Steel Engineers at Phil Schmidt's restaurant. His audience was comprised largely of Chicago district steel mill officials and employees. Substitution of plastics for metals in certain parts of commercial and household machines will reduce costs of production substantially, Dr. Bates said. As a result, there will be increased demand for the machines, leading to a larger volume of production and use of more metal in parts that plastics cannot replace. The site of old Fort Dearborn, built in 1803 and destroyed in the massacre of 1812, will be outlined in paint on the sidewalks at the intersection of Wacker Drive and Michigan Avenue as soon as weather permits, Colonel Harry A. Musham, chairman of the Fort Dearborn Memorial Commission, said yesterday. After 2 months of research, the location of the historic stockade was fixed by the commission as almost in the center of the plaza at the south end of the Michigan Avenue Bridge. The original blockhouses will be outlined on the sidewalks at the northwest and southeast corners of the intersection. William Scott, colored Grand Army of the Republic member who would have been 100 years old next April 21st, died yesterday in Edward Hines Jr. Memorial Hospital. His home was at 2350 Lake Street. Scott, who was born in slavery in Kentucky, served as a private in the 123rd Illinois Infantry during the Civil War. He had been a resident of Chicago for more than 60 years. At one time, Scott was a minister of the Baptist Church, but he had been long retired. He was an enthusiastic member of the Grand Army and had attended all the Memorial Day parades held in Chicago. The body will lie in the undertaking rooms at 2335 Lake Street from 6 p.m. tomorrow until 11 a.m. Saturday, when funeral services will be held in the Metropolitan Baptist Church at Warren Boulevard and Western Avenue. Burial will be in the John Brown Post lot in Mount Glenwood Cemetery. Surviving Scott is his widow. Hey guys, if you enjoy this channel, check out our companion channel to this one, the World War II Old Time Radio channel. Over there, you will hear radio broadcasts of the newsmakers, the news reporters, and various entertainment programs, comedy, drama, horror, all kinds of fun stuff. And you will also get the number one song every Friday that is represented on that channel as the radio programs correspond with the newspapers that you hear. Each upload premieres the same night the newspaper premieres that you are listening to right now. We even feature movie serials and classic movies on there when YouTube permits it. So swing over to the World War II Old Time Radio channel and click on that bell icon to subscribe. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well and click on that bell icon. I know you'll enjoy them. And in sports, New York, January 7th, the Chicago Blackhawks kept their 1940-41 National Hockey League record clear against the champion New York Rangers in Madison Square Garden tonight, 3-2. But before they did so, they had engaged in one of the wildest brawls with the Rangers and spectators that the Garden had seen since the Ranger-Boston Bruin melee in the Stanley Cup Series 2 years ago. More than 11,000 saw the game. In 4 games with the Rangers this season, the Hawks have won 3 and tied the other. The rough stuff started in the first period when Joe Cooper, Hawk defenseman, flattened Phil Watson with a blow on the head from his stick after Watson had elbowed him. Watson was knocked unconscious, and when he was revived, was assessed a minor penalty, Cooper drawing a major. The real battle was put on early in the second period immediately after the Rangers had tied the score at 1-1. Cooper and Watson started this fight too, but other players quickly joined in with fists swinging. Phil Hershigheimer and Al Coulter tangled, the former having his jersey torn off in the battle. Brian Hextall, Murray Patrick, and Coley Dahlstrom were also in on the fist swinging, and when referee Bill Stewart and a squadron of police finally restored order after a wild 8-minute free-for-all, Cooper, Watson, Hergensheimer, and Coulter drew major penalties, but the other participants escaped punishment. The wholesale series of penalties calmed tempers thereafter, and the rest of the game was devoted to the business of playing hockey. Coley Dahlstrom scored the first goal of the game at 4:46 of the opening period when Hergensheimer and Doug Bentley gave him assists on a pretty play that beat goalie Davey Kerr. Only 3 minutes 22 seconds of the second period had elapsed when the Rangers tied it up on Coulter's goal following Watson's pass, and then the big fight broke out. 1 minute and 5 seconds after the uproar had subsided, Lynn Patrick put the Rangers ahead with a terrific shot that eluded goalie Sam Lopresti at 4:27. Each team had 4 men on the ice at that time. Donnie Mariucci set up the tying goal for the Hawks at 9:31 in the third period when he skated around the Ranger defense and gave Bob Karst a pass right in front of the goal mouth. Bob tapped it in easily. Earl Siebert got the winning goal at 11:57 when he lashed the drive from the blue line. Kerr scarcely seeing the puck before it landed in the net. The Hawks left immediately after the game for home, where they will meet the Montreal Canadiens in the stadium Thursday night and the Detroit Red Wings on Sunday night. Montreal, Canada, January 7th. The Toronto Maple Leafs protected their place at the top of the National Hockey League with a 4-3 overtime victory over the Montreal Canadiens tonight. Montreal twice came from behind to tie the score, but finally gave way, dropping in the 6th place. The Leafs took the lead while Montreal was short-handed in the opening period, Nick Metz setting up a goal for center Sal Apps at 16:33. Then after a scoreless second period, Sweeney Schreiner put Toronto ahead 2-0 with a solo effort at 1:12 of the third period. From there on, the action was fast. Elmer Locke counted 2 goals within 2 minutes of each other to tie the score. Gordy Drillin put the Leafs in front, and then John Quilty knotted the score again for the Canadiens, who sent the contest into overtime. The deadlock lasted into 5:23 of the extra period when Don Metz took a double relay from Red Hamilton and Schreiner to score the winning goal. Boston, Massachusetts, January 7th. The Detroit Red Wings, undefeated in 6 starts, dropped out of first place in the National Hockey League deadlock with Toronto tonight as Boston's crippled Bruins held them to a 1-1 tie before 11,000 at Boston Garden. Waging their 4th clash of the campaign with the Bruins, who had a victory and 2 ties to their credit when tonight's game began, the Red Wings wrapped in the first goal during the 16th minute of play. It was scored by Carl Liscombe on a rebound from Art Herchenrader. Halfway through the second period, rookie Terry Reardon, centering Boston's third line with Pat McCreevy and Gordon Bruce, his recent teammates at the Bruins American League farm at Hershey, Pennsylvania, scored the equalizer. DeQuince University, unbeaten in the last 19 basketball games on its regular schedule and runner-up in the National Invitational Tourney in New York last year, will meet the Loyola Ramblers as part of a basketball doubleheader in the Coliseum Saturday night. On the same program, Bradley Tech, Little 19 champions for the last 32 years and undefeated in the conference in 4 years, will meet DePaul, which has been beaten only by Santa Clara. DeQuince will present 2 of basketball's current stars, Eddie Milkovich, forward, and Paul Widowitz, guard. Last year, Milkovich was named a member of Madison Square Garden's All-America team. Bradley also has an impressive record, having represented the Midwest in the national tournament 2 out of the last 3 years. Bradley lost out last year when DePaul gained the coveted invitation by beating Tech on its home floor at Peoria. Several hundred Peoria fans will accompany their team to Chicago Saturday night to see the Braves seek revenge for that loss. Chicago's Bruins, bidding for a third-place tie with Detroit in the league standings, meet the Eagles tonight in a National Basketball League contest in the 132nd Regiment Armory at Madison and Rockwell Streets. The preliminary game, starting at 7:45 p.m., will bring together the Doc Masons, defending champions, and the Burton-Dixie team in a Windy City League contest. Between the halves of this game, the sponsor of the defending champions will receive a trophy emblematic of the 1939-40 Windy City League Championship. Tonight's Bruins-Detroit game features Al Servey, Rochester Star, just signed by the Eagles, Ed Sadowski, Seton Hall College player, and Harry Jeanette, ex-Washington and Jefferson University star player, all of Eagles, and Wibbs Couts, Mike Novak, Bill Happick, Stan Zulkala, and Herb Ball of the Bruins. For the first time since boxing was legalized in Illinois in 1926, contestants will be permitted to weigh in at ringside when Tony Zale, middleweight champion, and Steve Mamakos of Washington, D.C. meet in a 10-round non-title bout in Chicago Stadium on Friday. The proposition, submitted by promoter Bill Rand on Monday and acted upon until yesterday, is to have the fighters step on the scales in the stadium dressing room at 8 p.m. Friday, 7 hours later than has been the custom heretofore. The boxers will weigh in wearing full ring equipment with the exception of gloves, which will be donned shortly after they enter the ring at 10 o'clock. Dizzy Dean, one of the few who still believes Dizzy Dean can pitch, yesterday completed the speediest move he's made since he was annexed by the Cubs for a mere $185,000 in 3 players. The once blustery Diz, who never overlooked the publicity value of a holdout role, received his 1941 contract only last weekend. Yesterday, it bounced back into the hands of Jim Gallagher, club general manager, and it not only bore Dean's signature, but was accompanied by a note in which he expressed his happiness. Of course, Dean's happiness is easily explained. He was offered $10,000, the same he took after failing as a holdout last spring, and the figures looked so impressive to him that he made haste to close the transaction. The day also brought forth one other Cub contract, as well as 2 of the White Sox who have their salary affairs fairly well cleaned up. The signed papers of outfielder Dominic D'Alessandro, the half-pint outfielder, reached the Cubs' office from Reading, Pennsylvania, shortly after the Dean document had arrived from Lancaster, Texas. The developments at Comiskey Park included the return of signed contracts of Dario Latigiani, the infielder recently taken from the Athletics, and Thurman Tucker, a kid fly chaser. Tucker is the hand-picked spring camp dark horse of Billy Webb, head man of the White Sox farm system. Tucker was purchased by Oklahoma City from a Cotton States League club late last season and soon thereafter was bought by the Sox. The 21-year-old outfielder led the Cotton States League in hitting with .390. He also led in fielding and base stealing. The Cubs' official 1941 roster containing names, exhibition dates, etc. will be passed out today, but will reveal no secrets except that infielder Rabbit Worsler's name is missing. The intention was to release the veteran, who was obtained on waivers from the Bees last summer, but after the roster had been sent to press, manager Jim Wilson decided to wait until he learns more about the other extra infielders. The Chicago baseball writers played host at $5 a plate last night to 350 guests at the third annual Diamond Dinner held in the Morrison Hotel. The program was made up of presentation of the Lou Comiskey Trophy to Lou Boudreau, Cleveland infielder, picked by the Chicago chapter of the Writers Association as the outstanding rookie of 1940, and a series of harmless gags especially prepared for the two Chicago clubs. New York, January 7th. 19 players who performed for Fordham in the Cotton Bowl, a member of the squad who was left home, and the undergraduate manager of the team were bedded in the university infirmary tonight, victims of an influenza epidemic that first struck the club in Dallas, Texas, and then hounded it on its homeward trip. No star of the losing battle against the Aggies escaped. Among those stricken were Len Eschmont, Steve Filipowitz, Lou DeFilippo, Johnny Kuzmin, Jim Blumenstock, Jim Lansing, Vince Dennery, Stanley Luchik, Steve Hudchek, Stanley Ratinsky, Joe Ungerer, Larry Sartori, Charlie Pierce, Tom McDougall, Tom Bennett, John Menapace, Steve Zott, Stanley Krivik, Jim Hearn, Bill Callagher, and manager Joe Brogan. Tom Deegan, director of sports publicity, also is suffering from influenza in a Dallas, Texas hospital. And that is sports, and that is news. Henry Chop reporting for Wednesday, January 8th, 1941. Have a swell day, and God bless.